والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ولا شبيه ولا مثيل له ولا ضد ولا ند ولا جسد ولا صورة ولا أعضاء له. كان الله على مكان فهو الآن على ما عليه كان، فلا تضربوا لله الأمثال ولله المثل الأعلى. تنزه ربي عن الجلوس والقعود وعن الحركة والسكون وعن الاتصال والانفصال. لا يحل فيه شيء ولا ينحل منه شيء ولا يحل هو في شيء، لأنه ليس كمثله شيء. مهما تصورت لذلك فالله لا يشبه ذلك، ومن وصف الله بمعنى من معاني البشر فقد كفر. وأشهد أن سيدنا وعظيمنا وقائدنا وقرة أعيننا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله ونبيه وصفيه وحبيبه وخليله، أرسله الله هدى ورحمة للعالمين، هاديا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه سراجا وهاجا وقمرا منيرا. اللهم صل وسلم وأعظم وأنعم وأكرم على هذا النبي الكريم سيدنا محمد خاتم النبيين، كلما ذكره الذاكرون وغفل عن ذكره الغافلون. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله، الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله، الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا عظيم الجاه. أما بعد، فنذكر أنفسنا بإخلاص النية لله تعالى في حضور هذا المجلس، مجلس علم الدين، المجلس الذي وصفه الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم بأنه روضة من رياض الجنة، والمجلس الذي تحفه الملائكة فتنزل فيه الرحمات والبركات والأسرار. فهنيئا لمن وفقه الله تعالى لهذا العمل العظيم. I praise Allah, I glorify Him, and I thank Him for all the blessings that He gives without Him being obligated to give anything. And I ask Allah Ta'ala to raise the rank of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and to protect His Muslim nation. I testify that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, the one without a partner, the one without an equal, the one without a similar, the one who is unlike anything in the universe, and nothing in the universe is like Him. He has no father, no mother, no sister, no brother, no son, and no daughter. He exists without time and place because He is the creator of time and place. He does not reside above the throne, and He is not attributed with fatigue like the Jews say. Our Lord is glorified beyond any imperfection that the non-Muslims attribute to Him. Whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah Ta'ala does not resemble that. And whoever attributes an attribute of the creations to Allah is outside of Islam. And I testify that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the son of Abdullah, the son of Abdul Muttalib, the son of Hashim, the son of Abdul Manaf, from the tribe of Quraysh, is the best creation of Allah and His final prophet and messenger, sent to all humans and jinn, and He is truthful about everything that He conveyed in the revelation. Thereafter, we remind ourselves to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah in attending the session of Islamic knowledge, because having the sincere intention is a requirement to get the reward. So the Muslim, whenever he does a good deed, he has to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah to get reward for that good deed. The reward is defined as the compensation that the Muslim receives in the hereafter for the good deeds that he did in this life among what makes him happy. An example of the reward that is guaranteed to the righteous Muslim in the grave is that his grave is expanded approximately 105 feet by 105 feet, and his grave is illuminated with a light similar to the light of the full moon, and the fragrance of paradise will be present in the grave. The sincere intention means for the Muslim to do the good deed, seeking the acceptance of Allah only, and not the praise of the people. So alhamdulillah, we are grateful to Allah, and we are happy that we have been guided to Islam, which is the greatest endowment. And we are grateful and thankful to Allah, and we are happy that Allah Ta'ala has guided us to be among the students of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, among those who are part of the saved group. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he informed us in the hadith that is confirmed that this nation, those who identify as Muslim, that they will split up into 73 groups. And all of them would be in hellfire except for one. And so when the Prophet ﷺ was asked, and who is that one? He said, As-Sawadul A'zam. And in another narration he said, Al-Jama'ah. And in another narration he said, Man kana ala ma ana alayhi wa ashabi. So these narrations, they let us know that the majority of those who identify as Muslim, they are the same group, that they have the same creed as the Prophet ﷺ. And that the rest of those other groups, they are not upon the creed of the Prophet ﷺ, and they are deviant, and if they die on that creed, they will go to hellfire. Some of them, or the majority of them, will go to hellfire forever because they are classified as non-Muslims. And a few of those deviant groups, their deviance did not reach to the level of blasphemy, but because they are deviant in the creed, they will go to hellfire, but not forever. So it's guaranteed that they'll go to hellfire if they die on that creed, but they won't go there forever. So they're not like, it's not the same as the Sunni Muslim who died with enormous sins, like among the actions. Like let's say he fornicated, and he was a Sunni Muslim and he fornicated, and he died without repenting. What do we say about that Muslim? Maybe he is forgiven, maybe he's tortured. But the one who is deviant in the creed, and he's one of those 72 misguided groups that did not reach to the level of kufr, of blasphemy, his case is that for sure he'll enter hellfire. Because the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, كُلُّهَا فِي النَّارِ إِلَّا وَاحِدًا, which means all of them would be in hell except for one, except for one group. So we are grateful and thankful to Allah that we are among Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, and that we are not part of any of those misguided groups. So before we continue on with our subject matter that we have been covering, I'm going to mention the case of the zakat so that it's clear, and so that whoever wants to pay it, they do it in the proper way. So, and the case of zakat is a simple case. We mostly teach according to Imam al-Shafi'i, radiyallahu anhu. And according to Imam al-Shafi'i, whoever was alive a part of Ramadan and a part of Shawwal, Shawwal being the month after Ramadan. So whoever was alive for some of Ramadan and some of Shawwal, that person is obligated to pay something called Zakatul Fitr. He's obligated to pay for himself, and he's obligated to pay for those who he is obligated to support. So in the Shafi'i school, who does the person have to support? The man, for example, he has to support his wife, he has to support his prepubescent children, whether they be male or female. And if he has slaves, he has to support his slaves. If he has poor Muslim parents, he has to support his poor Muslim parents. So if that's his case, if that specific man, he has a wife, he has prepubescent children, he has slaves, he has poor Muslim parents, so he has to pay a saw for himself and for his wife and for his kids and for his slaves and for his poor Muslim parents. So if he has 4 kids and him and his wife and his 2 poor Muslim parents, how many saw is that? He has 4 kids, 1 wife, let's say 2 slaves and 2 poor Muslim parents. 8, 10? Okay. So himself, his wife, his 4 kids, that's already 6. His 2 Muslim parents, 8, and his 2 slaves. So he has to pay how many saw? 10 saw. So what is a saw? It is a measure. And the saw is equal to 4 muds. And what is a mud? It is the 2 hands, average size hands, cupped together. So the amount of staple food that you can fit inside of there is 1 mud. 4 of those equals 1 saw. So let's make it easier. If the man only has 1 wife and 2 kids, how many saw he has to pay? He has to pay 1 for himself, 1 for his wife, and 1 for each prepubescent child. So that's 4 saw. So in the Shafi'i school, he has to actually pay the food. So for example, in this country, the most common staple crop is wheat. So you would actually have to pay 4 saw of wheat. Not flour, not bread, not the actual grain. He gives it to one of the 8 recipients of zakat. Okay, that's in the Shafi'i school. Plain and simple, easy. Most people in this country, they don't follow that. They pay money. So that would be outside of the Shafi'i school. So what I just mentioned, all those details I just mentioned, that's the Shafi'i school. Now we're going to talk about the Hanafi school. Because they're the ones who say you can pay money. And the equivalent value of the amount of food that you're supposed to pay. So here's what the Hanafis they say. So zakatul fitr على القول الأحوط عند الحنفية 1145 غراما من القمح أو قيمة ذلك. So according to the Hanafi school, zakatul fitr, according to the safest saying, is 2,145 grams of wheat or its value. So people that deal with measures and things like that, how many pounds is that of wheat? 2,145 grams. Close to 5 pounds. Or its equivalent in money. The equivalent cost of 2,145 grams of wheat. Okay? So far so good? So if you have the 2,145 grams of wheat in the Hanafi school, you pay that. Right? You actually pay that amount of wheat. Or its value. Yeah, the amount of money that it costs for 2,145 grams of wheat. So far so good? Following? Alright, how much is that? How much do you have to spend to buy 2,145 grams of wheat in this area? Has anybody done that research? And you can easily find out. You can, for example, look at Walmart, how much, they sell the bags of wheat. There's different kinds. So you check the weight. Is it equal to 2,145 grams? How much does it cost to buy that? You can check Walmart, you can check other places, and you get kind of like a gauge, and then you take the cautious side and you make it a little bit higher so that you're covered. So it says here, so whoever wants to pay zakat with paper money, then he has to check the price of that amount of wheat in his region. In Philadelphia this year, the amount is approximately $15 American to be on the safe side. So obviously things have gone up, inflation, we don't know what that's about. So before in the past we would say $8, $10. So in Philly now it's 15. How much is it in Florida? And you do your research. Can you said 14, right?
Philly, they said around $14. But then between state and other state, it could be dollar less, dollar more. That's what we said. If we donate $15, and whatever the rest is donation, will be safe.
Okay, so if you to pay your zakat al-fitr, basically, bottom line, I don't think you're going to be going according to a Shafi'i. You're not going to get one saw of wheat and then give it to a poor Muslim. You're going to get money out of the bank and donate it. So if you're going to do that, then approximately 15 American dollars should cover it for each individual that is obligated to pay the zakat. Now in the Hanafi school, there are some different details. The only one that I know right now, off the top of my head, is that the prepubescent girl, the pubescent girl, the father is obligated to provide for her, so he can pay the zakat. And he has to pay the zakat for her. In the Shafi'i school, once the child becomes pubescent, the parents are not obligated to support them anymore. So if the parents want to pay the zakat al-fitr for their pubescent children, they have to get their permission. For anyone, if you want to pay zakat for anyone that you're not obligated to support, you have to get their permission first. But in the Hanafi school, the father has to pay for his pubescent daughter as long as she's living in his house and until she gets married. So we're clear on the amount, 15 American dollars?
14 or 15?
15. Maybe wheat is cheaper for it than a Philly? No. I don't have too many details in the Hanafi school. I just know that that's something to pay attention to. Not to think that because your daughter is pubescent that you don't have to pay for her because that's what the Shafi'i school says. هذا في الفدية. No. So then the details continue. If the person wanted his zakat to reach the people who deserve it, by way of the Jam'iyya, by way of the ASCP, then he has to authorize a person and for there to be a clear statement between him and the person he's authorizing. Like to say to him, for example, I authorize you to take this zakat that I'm giving you on my behalf, to distribute it on my behalf. And so the person who's being authorized, he accepts that either verbally, by saying, for example, yes, or he accepts that figuratively by, for example, taking the money and then giving it to those who deserve the zakat. So in the Hanafi school, they have the concept of the figurative acceptance, which is you don't have to say it, but if you take it and you do it, then that means you accept it. No. Yeah, if the person who wants his zakat to reach those who deserve it by way of the ASCP, then he has to authorize a person, and for there to be a clear statement between him and between the one he's authorizing, like to say to him, for example, I authorize you to pay this money as zakat for me. وكلتك أن تخرج هذا المال زكاة عني مثلا. So the one who's being authorized, he accepts either by verbally saying yes, for example, or he accepts figuratively by taking the money and distributing it to those that deserve it. No.
If you put the money in the box dedicated for zakat, is it enough, or you have to say to the person?
We're coming to that detail. No. Then he says, or the one who is giving the authorization, he says, for example, I authorize so-and-so in this region to give the zakat, to pay this money as zakat on my behalf. And it is sufficient for the statement to be understood, for the authorization to be understood by the person that is being authorized. Yani the statement is enough that the person understands he is being authorized. For example, like to say to him, this is my zakat money, give it to the one who deserves it. So that means he's giving you the permission to pay it for the one who deserves it. And so the one who is being authorized, he takes the money and he does it.
It has to be in the block. It has to be to Muslim boy, right? To Muslim.
Oh, I'm going to mention that before. And so the one who is authorized to take the money, zakat money, from more than one person, he has to make sure not to mix the money together. Rather, he keeps the zakat money that he got from one individual separate from the zakat money that he got from another individual, until he pays that money to the one who deserves it. الآن يأتي هذا الصندوق. فإن كان يحمل صندوقا مثلا ليضع فيه مال الزكاة فليحمل معه مغلفات يضع في كل مغلف زكاة الشخص حتى لا يختلط المال. I'm sorry. That says that if the person carries a box, for example, so that the zakat money can be put in it, then let that person who's carrying the box carry some envelopes so that he puts each amount of money inside of the envelope so that the money doesn't mix. And it is permissible for the one that has been authorized to make that zakat money reach to those who deserve it to authorize someone else, even if he did not get permission from the first. So the one who, for example, I authorize someone to distribute my zakat money. That person I authorize, he can authorize someone else to distribute it as well, without asking me, can I authorize so-and-so to distribute that money? Yeah, so if a person authorizes another person, like I authorize you to give the zakat money to those who deserve it, then you ask, for example, someone else to give it to those who deserve it. You authorize that person to distribute it. You can do that, even if without asking me. And then it says it is not valid. Yes, right.
What happens if the other person doesn't accept, like, distributing?
Maybe the other person doesn't accept. Then that's it. He can't give it to him. Because authorization, and it has to be by acceptance. You can't force someone to do it. No. Then it says it is not valid to give someone a check as zakah, because it is something that is conditional or it's inevitable. It has to be done. That the money gets separated from what is being given as zakah.
So it can't be checked, right?
Can't be. However, it is permissible for someone to authorize a second person to pay zakat on his behalf from that person, that second person's money, and then that first person gives him a check as a gift, for example. So basically, I tell someone, pay, let's say, zakat for 4 people, 15 times 4, or just do that math here. 15 times 4, so I tell him, hey, to pay zakat for 4 people, and so I tell him the amount, and I authorize him to pay on my behalf. That second person, what does he do? He has some cash on him. He takes his money, his own money, and he said, I pay this as zakat on behalf of so-and-so. Right? So then that first person who told him pays zakat for me, he then gives him a check for that amount of money, and he gives it to him as a gift, for example.
I'm pretty sure it's $60.
Oh, mashallah, you did that fast in your head? As for the expiation of the one who is unable to fast because of old age, it is valid according to the Hanafi school what suffices for 2 meals. And basically lunch and dinner. Or the equivalent amount of that, and the amount of money that it would take to do that.
Can you give like $20 for like 50, like $20, $40?
That would be a lot. That would be more than enough. As for the one who is unable to fast because of a sickness, he is not obligated to pay the fidya in the Hanafi school. Rather, he just makes it up. So, that's all the details of that. Always remember that these matters are related to the hereafter. And whatever that you do with regards to your obligation, like paying zakat, it's better to make sure that you're doing it right instead of, let's say, feeling some social pressure to do it in a specific way. Do it in the way that you're sure that you're doing it correctly and that on Judgment Day you're going to be safe. And if that means that you yourself take that money and you yourself give it to a person that deserves it, one of the 8 recipients, then do that. If you are sure that, for example, to authorize someone to give it on your behalf, and you feel comfortable with that, then do that as well. No.
قضية الاختلاط هذا ما كلاهما سيذهب إلى الفقير.
هكذا عندهم الحنفية أو يعني في الفقه الحنفي هناك تفاصيل رائعة لمن درسها. نعم، بالنسبة إلى الموكل الذي يوكل غيره لابد أن يكون لفظا، أن يقول له بعبارة واضحة بينهما: وكلتك أن تخرج عني هذا المال زكاة. Yes, tell the person that's holding the box. So if somebody's holding the box, which we have one over there. So if someone's holding the box, if someone's holding the box, then you tell that person to authorize you to pay zakat, this money as zakat on my behalf. Now for the acceptance, it doesn't have to be verbal. أما للإيجاب لا يشترط أن يكون بالكلام وبالعبارة. يجوز أن يكون حكما بأخذ ماله وصرفه لمن يستحق الزكاة. نعم. Indeed, the knowledge is a light. May Allah protect us. Ameen. Continuing on with what we were explaining yesterday, which we were talking about something called the impeccability of the prophets. So we mentioned that the prophets, they have to be attributed with honesty, truthfulness, above average intelligence, trustworthiness, and that they are clear from being attributed with betrayal or lying or dishonesty or vileness or stupidity or foolishness and cowardice and anything that repels people away. Because yes, the person is accountable. Once the person is accountable, they will be blamed for their own decision. That's true 100%. We're not deflecting their accountability or the responsibility of themselves that they have to follow the truth. And also we learn from this that since the person following the truth is what's better for them, and that's really the objective, Allah Ta'ala, He sent the prophets and the messengers as a mercy to the people, as a mercy. not because he's obligated to send someone to guide them, but out of mercy for them. Because if it were not for the prophets and the messengers, then the people, they would not know what to do. There would be chaos and anarchy or corrupt systems that would rule. And people would not know which way is up and which way is down and which is the right path and which is the dark path and which is how to get to paradise or how to get to hellfire. Or they wouldn't even understand these concepts. Look at the people that are living in the Amazon that have no contact with the outside world, or these like tribes that live like on a desert island, and anybody that tries to go there gets killed and they get eaten. How do they live? They're like naked and they eat people and they do weird things and they do strange things. They have no idea, no concept about these things that we're talking about. And they're essentially savage. They live like beasts. They're similar to beasts, except that they're humans. So that's what the whole world would be like if there was no organization, no system, there was no standard of morality. And so Allah Ta'ala, He sent the prophets and the messengers to teach humans what that standard of morality is. So because that is the case, so those prophets and messengers were equipped with everything that could attract the people and that would close the door for their devil and for their nafs to make excuses as to why they would not follow them. And even the scholars, they mention that there's a wisdom behind making the prophets and the messengers to be of humankind. Instead of, let's say, God sending an angel, and that angel appearing to the people, and that angel telling the people, I am a messenger of God, this is what you have to do, this is the correct belief, these are the rules. The scholars, they mention that there's a wisdom behind that the prophets and the messengers were sent as humans. Because if the prophets and the messengers were sent as angels, then the people would think, oh, we can never live up to that. You know, they're angels, they're greater and they've been created this way and they're a higher being than we are. We can never live up to that. So that's one of the wisdom behind the prophets and the messengers being of the humankind, because they're human like us. So they go through the human experience like us. They were born like us, except for Prophet Adam alayhi salam and partially Prophet Isa alayhi salam. But essentially, the prophets and the messengers, they are men that they go through the human experience, except that those men, they have been purified and cleansed and protected from the flaws of men. The things that would make someone repelled away from them. So they're essentially perfect in terms of the human context, so that the people who they go to and they tell them, I am a prophet, I am a messenger, this is what God revealed, follow these laws, so that those people that are hearing that message, they don't say, oh, that person's ugly, I'm not going to follow him. Because there's people like that. We know that most people in the world are like shallow, superficial, they're arrogant, they have these flaws. They look at that person, oh, look at that person's dress. Oh, look at that person. They, how could they wear that? Oh, look at the clothes that that person is wearing. Look at the car that person is driving. And then they smile in your face. But they wouldn't take, for example, the truth. So if someone tells them, if you do such and such, you're going to go to hell. If you do such and such, you're going to go to paradise. They're going to say, oh, that person's ugly, I'm not going to listen. Oh, that person, they have this and that characteristic, I'm not going to listen. So the prophets, they are perfect in the sense that you can't say anything negative about them. You can't criticize them. You can't say that they're too tall or too short. You can't say that they're too fat or too skinny. You can't say that they are rude. You can't say anything about them because they're perfect. Perfect physical. They have the most beautiful voices, the most beautiful faces, and perfect character. So this is something that the prophets were equipped with so that they could spread the truth. Because then the person, they can't make excuses. So that teaches us that even though it's the other person's responsibility to follow the truth, but still, the way that we speak, or the way that we approach, or the way that we deliver the message, it has some consideration. It has some consideration. Because your goal is to get this person to accept the truth. In order to do that, the person has to admit and realize that they're wrong and that they have to change. And if you're being aggressive, or if you're being rough, or if you're being, and if you're acting, being some type of way, the person is going to put up a wall. You're going to put up a block. You're going to say, even though this person's telling the truth, but because of the way that they're talking to me, I'm going to reject. And that's not going to benefit that person. So the one who's sincere and the one who wants to benefit others, he would look at that and he would make sure that he embodies the good character. So we were mentioning yesterday that it is impossible for a prophet to tell a lie, because this would damage or tarnish the credibility of the message. So none of the prophets ever lie. And none of the prophets would ever do anything vile, like sneak lustful looks at marriageable women, or like stealing one single grape. And there is none among the prophets who are vulgar, meaning that they say vulgar statements that the nafs, or that the self of the person finds to be disturbing. And there are no prophets who are slow to comprehend. And there are no prophets who are unable to present the evidence against those who oppose them. And also it's impossible for a prophet to have a slip of the tongue. So you know how when we're talking, we might want to say, for example, it's cold outside, but instead of saying cold, we say it's hot. It's called a slip of the tongue. So the prophets are protected from that. The prophets, they never commit that. They never have a slip of the tongue in religious matters or in worldly matters. Because had it been permissible or possible for the prophets to have a slip of the tongue, then the confidence in their message would have been tarnished. People would say, how do we know that that judgment wasn't a slip of the tongue? And so obviously that would take away the credibility of their message. Also, everything that is physically repulsive, the prophets, they're not attributed with that. Like certain types of sicknesses that are repulsive, like worms coming out of the body. So the prophets, they never have any diseases that makes them, or that people would be disgusted from, like worms coming out of the body. Likewise, cowardice is impossible to be attributed to the prophets. However, natural fear is not impossible to be attributed to the prophets. Rather, the natural fear, it is found in them. And that's like, for example, being repelled from a snake. Because indeed, the nature of the human, it dictates, or automatically the nature of the human wants to get away from the snake. And the like, whatever's like that. Like for example, if a group of non-Muslims were trying to attack one of the prophets, they wouldn't want those non-Muslims to reach them. And it is never said about a prophet that he ran away. And to the extent that it gives the impression of cowardice. As for example, avoiding harm, this doesn't give the impression of cowardice. So we say about the Prophet ﷺ that he migrated from Mecca to Medina, fulfilling the order of Allah, and to avoid the harm of the non-Muslims. So we mentioned about the line. We wanted to talk about Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. And so we just want to give that one example that many people probably have heard, which is that Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was going through the land of Egypt, and during that time there was an evil pharaoh who had a nasty habit. He had a bad evil habit, which is that he basically raped other men's wives. So he only wanted that woman if she was married. And Prophet Ibrahim's wife, Lady Sarah, she was the most beautiful woman on earth at the time. And so when Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and Lady Sarah, they were passing through, some of the agents of the Pharaoh, they told the Pharaoh, the most beautiful woman that we have ever seen has entered your lands. And so when Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was asked by one of those agents of the Pharaoh about who she is, the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, he said, "Innaha ukhti," which means, indeed, she is my sister. And so we said that this statement of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam is technically, by definition, truth and also religiously truth. Because he didn't say, she is my blood sister or my sister from my father and my mother. He said, she is my sister. And meaning by that, she is my sister in Islam. But the one who he was speaking to, he automatically assumed that it meant blood sister. So this, what happened with Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, is not a lie. Not technically and not religiously. Rather, it's truth. So anything that's mentioned like that about Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, he never told a lie. Not technically and not religiously. And also, the prophets, they are protected from blasphemy, from enormous sins, and from small, abject sins, before prophethood and after prophethood. So before the prophets, they receive revelation, they are protected from blasphemy. So let's look at Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as an example. When he was born, there was no message of a prophet that was still present among the people. And the society that he grew up in were idol worshippers, so they were worshipping the idols. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he never worshipped the idols, even before he received the revelation. He never worshipped the idols. He never did what the idol worshippers did. And he never believed what they believed. So as for the belief, the prophets, they are inspired by Allah to have the correct belief, which is something that even for us, that are not prophets, even before, let's say, we find out about Islam, we can know, for example, that this universe has a beginning, therefore it has a creator, and that creator is unlike us. We can go that far, and that's the correct belief. That would be tawheed, and to believe that about Allah. So the prophets, they have the correct belief, but because they haven't received the revelation yet, they don't know the details of the law. So all the prophets, they always have the correct belief. They never believe in anything that's blasphemy. And also all the prophets, they never do an enormous sin, even before they became prophets. So they never drank alcohol, they never fornicated, they never killed unjustly, they never stole, they never did any enormous sin, before prophethood and after. And also, they never committed any small sins that are abject, meaning that they show low character. That shows that the person who does that is a low life. Like the example that we mentioned, like sneaking lustful looks at marriageable women and like stealing one single grape. It's a small sin, but it shows that the one who does that has a low self. Nafsuhu waqiyah. So this is the majority of Ahlul Sunnah. This is what they say about the impeccability of the prophets. Yani, they say the prophets never do kufr, they never do an enormous sin, and they never do a small sin that shows a low character. But a small sin that doesn't show a low character, the majority of Ahlul Sunnah, they said it's possible. Possible. Meaning, it could happen that a prophet of God, a prophet or a messenger, commits a small sin that does not show a low character. This is the majority of Ahlul Sunnah. They said that, and that is the saying, that is the stronger saying based on the evidence. Because the Quran is explicit. Particularly about Prophet Adam alayhi salam. The term asa was used, which literally means he sinned. So what does that mean? Yani, Prophet Adam alayhi salam, he committed a small sin that is not vile. It doesn't show low character, which is when he ate from the tree. That's what the Quran says. Now there is a minority opinion amongst Ahlul Sunnah, which is a valid opinion, but it's a minority. Some Imams of Ahlul Sunnah, they said the prophets don't do any sin at all. No sin whatsoever. And that's a valid opinion, but the evidence really doesn't support them because they make ta'wil to that verse, for example, about Prophet Adam. Wa'asal. Which is, but still it's a valid opinion. You have a question like that? No.
It's more about to show the wisdom of Allah. For example, when Prophet Adam ate on the tree, it doesn't mean that he sinned. It just as a mistake that, obviously.
Yeah, so like we said, some imams, which is a minority opinion, but it's still valid, it is still within the category of Ahlul Sunnah. It's still within the category of the saved group. Which some imams, they said the prophets don't commit any sin at all. And that the term asa that was used, that they say the term is there, they confirm that the term was used, but they said it means something other than a sin. But the majority of the imams, they said it's a literal sin. And he literally, that prophet committed a literal sin. But it was a small sin that does not show a low character. And the majority opinion has many other proofs. The last case is, before we finish this chapter, is since that's the case, since we know that the prophets are impeccable and clear from committing blasphemy, enormous sins, and small abject sins, we know that they're protected from that, and that's by consensus. So the imams, they have a difference of opinion about the small sin that doesn't show low character. Some said it's possible that a prophet does it, and some said that the prophets don't do it. And the ones who have the majority opinion, they have the stronger evidence, which is, like for example, Prophet Adam alayhi salam, that he ate from the tree after being forbidden from doing that. But all of the imams agree that the prophets, they don't commit kufr, blasphemy, enormous sins, or small abject sins at all. Okay? So because of that, we know that the brothers of Prophet Yusuf, alayhi salam, excluding Benjamin, because he was very young at the time, but the 10 brothers of Prophet Yusuf, that they did those enormous sins and they committed blasphemy as well. And then they repented, of course, but they had done that to Prophet Yusuf. They beat him up, they tried to kill him, they threw him down a well, they unjustly sold him into slavery, they lied to their dad, they made fun of their dad, who was a prophet. They degraded their dad, who was a prophet, now which is blasphemy. They did all that, so that means that they themselves, they never received prophethood. So, prophethood was not bestowed upon the brothers of Prophet Yusuf, who, excluding Binyamin, committed the mean deeds mentioned in the Quran. The descendants of Prophet Yusuf, Prophet Yaqub, referred to in the Quran as Al-Asbaq, who received the revelation and were chosen for prophethood, are the descendants of Yusuf's brothers. We'll talk more in detail about that inshallah next class. Now,
there is some groups nowadays say that the prophets are not imperfect.
so they say that prophets would commit an enormous sin, for example? No, we do that. We seek refuge with Allah from His text. Any other questions? طيب نهلل لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم ربي اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات بارك الله فيكم السلام عليكم